I am Arya Voss, 28 years old, and I'm an accountant. My hands were covered in potting soil when my phone buzzed. I was helping my grandmother, Eleanor, gently repot a stubborn orchid. I glanced at the message. It was from my mother, Susan. On our way to Panama. Transferred funds from the trust for our new start. Take care of Eleanor. I looked up at my grandmother. She was smiling vaguely at the flower, humming to herself. Completely unaware. I leaned in close and whispered, "Good thing I moved that $200. 000 yesterday. Grandma, if you're listening to this and you've ever been the only responsible one in the family, you need to hear what happened next to that text message. You have to understand Applewood Orchards. This farm isn't just a business. It's my grandmother's entire legacy. It's sprawling, beautiful, and honestly struggling. My older sister, Chloe, is the artistic soul. She's poured everything into trying to save it, converting the old barn into a small, charming cafe and bookstore. She handles the cider, the baking, and the aesthetics. I handle the spreadsheets. As the accountant, I'm the practical one. I'm the one who knows we're barely breaking even. The only thing keeping us afloat is the family trust fund. Grandmother Eleanor set it up years ago with $250. Lean. The rules were crystal clear. That money was to be used for two things. First, to maintain the farm as a legacy. And second, to pay for her increasing medical care. Her Alzheimer's has been getting worse. Some days, she's lucid and witty. And other days, she gets lost walking to the kitchen. That fund is her safety net. It's our safety net. And then there are my parents, David and Susan. To everyone else, they are charming, wonderful, free spirits. They're the life of every party, always chasing some new exciting dream. But to me and Chloe, they're just irresponsible. They've always treated Applewood not as a home, but as an ATM, and they've started to treat their own mother, Eleanor, as a burden. We've already raised our kids. My father David said to me last month, laughing it off, "We're supposed to be enjoying our retirement, not becoming caretakers." I'm the only one who sees the bank statements. As the accountant, I'm a co-trustee on the account. And for the last 6 months, I'd been watching the money. Small withdrawals at first. Farm repairs, my father would say. Specialist consultations for Eleanor, my mother would claim. But the numbers didn't add up. The repairs were happening at expensive restaurants. The consultations looked a lot like spa days. They were draining the trust faster and faster every month. I tried to talk to Chloe about it, but she just shook her head, exhausted from a 12-hour day at the cafe. "Ariafos. Please," she'd sighed. "I can't handle another fight. They're just being themselves. What can we do? That's the problem. Isn't it? We let them get away with it because it's easier than the confrontation." But I looked at the spreadsheets, and I saw a hard deadline approaching. At the rate they were spending, Eleanor's entire future, her medical care and the farm itself would be gone in less than a year. They weren't just being irresponsible anymore. This was a different level of selfish. This was theft. And I was the only one in a position to stop it. The real tension started about 3 months ago. It was subtle at first. I walked into the study and saw my father, David, quickly minimizing a browser window. I caught a glimpse of the web page. Glossy photos of white sand beaches and high-rise condos. Luxury retirement communities in Panama. The header read, "Just daydreaming." "Ah yeah, girl," he said, laughing a little too loudly. "You know, your mother and me always planning the next big adventure." A week later, my mother Susan started taking her phone calls on the back porch, her voice a hushed whisper. If I walked outside, she'd snap the phone shut. "Just catching up with an old friend." Honey," she'd say, not meeting my eyes. Then they started forgetting their shifts to watch grandmother Eleanor. Chloe and I had a strict schedule. We split the caregiving, balancing it with my accounting work and her running the cafe. But suddenly, my parents' errands started running long. "Oh, we just lost track of time," Mom would say, breezing in 2 hours late, leaving Chloe completely exhausted and unable to prep for the next day's baking. The burden fell as it always did on me and my sister. Chloe grew quiet, dark circles under her eyes. I just got angrier. The final red flag came one evening while I was paying the farm's bills. My mother sat across from me at the kitchen table pretending to read a magazine. "You know, adios," she said, her tone casual. Too casual. "You're the only one besides your father and me with full access to the trust." "Right, as the co-trustee." I looked up from my laptop. "Yes, that's how Grandma set it up. I was just thinking," she continued. "What if there was an emergency? What if you weren't here? Maybe you should. You know, just in case. Write down the passwords for us. Just so we have them." A cold dread settled in my stomach. It was so clumsy. So transparent. She wasn't asking for access in an emergency. She was checking her escape route. She was checking if I was in the way. I just stared at her. "I don't think that's necessary. Mom, the bank has all the succession documents. That's what lawyers are for." Hair's smile tightened. "Of course. Dear. Just a thought." I lay awake all night. That conversation playing on a loop. They were planning something. They were going to leave. They were going to leave us with a failing farm and a grandmother who needed constant, expensive care. And they were planning to take the money meant to save both. Should I confront them? I knew how that would go. They would lie. They would gaslight me. They'd call me paranoid and ungrateful, all while hiding their new luggage in the back of their closet. I wrestled with this for days. I felt this crushing, suffocating guilt. This is the burden of being the family anchor. Isn't it? You're the responsible one. The one who holds everything together. And because of that, you feel guilty for even thinking about drawing a line. You feel guilty for defending yourself. Going against your own parents, even when you know they're wrong. Feels like a betrayal. It feels unnatural. I was the one who was supposed to keep the peace. And here I was mentally preparing for war. I felt like a traitor. That feeling lasted until I walked into the cafe late one night. I found Chloe asleep at one of the tables, her head resting on a stack of unpaid invoices, her face pale with exhaustion. I walked back to the main house. Grandmother Eleanor was standing in the hallway looking at a framed photo. Her eyes filled with tears. "Have you seen my husband?" she whispered. "I can't find him. My grandfather has been gone for 10 years. In that moment, all my guilt vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't betraying my family. I was protecting it. My real family. My sister. And my grandmother. My parents had already made their choice. Now it was time to make mine. The next morning, I went to the bank. I sat down with the bank manager, Mrs. Chen Esco Trustee. I had the legal authority. I didn't need their permission. I opened a new protected account. The Eleanor Care and Applewood Preservation Fund. The only signatories were me and Chloe. Then I initiated the transfer. I moved $200, 000 from the original trust into the new one. I was meticulous. I'm an accountant. After all, I printed out every statement, every contribution me and Chloe had made to the farm, every dollar earmarked by the trust for Eleanor's care. I left femtio. 0 inches, the old account. Enough to be a tempting prize. Enough to make them think they had gotten away with it. I walked out of that bank, my hands shaking, but my spine made of steel. I had all the documentation. I had all the receipts. I had set the trap. And now, all I had to do was wait for them to walk into it. That night, I got the confirmation I dreaded. I was heading to the kitchen for some tea. Long after Chloe and Grandma were asleep, I heard my parents talking in the kitchen, their voices low and urgent. I froze in the dark hallway. "We deserve this." David, my mother, Suzanne, was saying. Her voice wasn't tearful. It was hard. She's had her life. We are not going to waste the rest of our lives changing diapers again. It's not what we signed up for. But what about the girls? My father asked, his voice weaker than hers. What about them? Susan scoffed. They're adults. Arya Voss has her accounting. Chloe has that. Little hobby cafe. They can figure out the farm. Wushimeyuan. 000 is more than enough for them to figure it out. It's our turn. David. That community in Panama looks perfect. I stood there, my blood running cold, changing diapers again. That's how she saw her own mother. Abortin. An inconvenience. And $50. Lin Ling Ling. She really thought that was a fair trade for abandoning her mother and leaving us with a mountain of debt. And in that moment, I finally understood. It wasn't just selfishness or irresponsibility. It was something deeper. It's what you might call main character syndrome. My parents, David and Susan, truly believed down to their bones that they were the stars of their own movie. They were the protagonists on a grand adventure. And in their story, everyone else. Me, my sister, and even their own ailing mother. We were just supporting characters. We were extras. Our needs, our struggles, our entire lives were just subplots. B stories. And when a subplot becomes inconvenient or boring, or when it gets in the way of the main character's great adventure, you just cut it. You write it out of the script. They didn't see this as an abandonment. They didn't see it as a betrayal. They just saw it as the start of their sequel. And we were all just collateral damage. That cold, terrifying realization sent me straight to my office. If they were capable of that, what else were they capable of? My accountant brain took over. No more emotions. Just facts. I stayed up all night. I wasn't just checking the trust fund anymore. I was running a full-scale audit of Applewood Orchards. I pulled every loan document, every title, every bank statement from the last 5 years. I knew what to look for. I knew the red flags. And at 3:00 inches the morning, I found it. It was buried in a stack of refi documents. 3 months ago, my parents had secretly taken out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit against the farm. They had forged my grandmother's signature as the primary owner. The amount, $70. Ling Ling Ling. The money was already gone. Withdrawn in cash and wire transfers over the last 12 weeks. They had been paying their personal debts. They had been buying their plane tickets. They had been funding their escape. I looked at the due date. The first payment on that fraudulent $70, 000 loan was due in 30 days. When it defaulted, the bank wouldn't just call. They would seize the farm. They would seize my grandmother's home. I finally understood. The $50, 000, they were leaving behind in the trust wasn't a mercy. It was a joke. It wouldn't even cover the down payment on the new debt they had secretly created. They weren't just planning to leave us. They were planning to sink the ship with all of us on it. The next morning, my parents were impossibly cheerful. My father, David, was whistling as he made coffee. My mother, Susan, was helping grandmother Eleanor with her breakfast, spooning oatmeal for her with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. They were dressed up. Just a few errands to run in the city today, Mom said, kissing Grandma's head. It was a long, lingering kiss. A performance. We might be back a little late. So don't wait up for us. Be good. Girls, my father added, patting me on the shoulder. As they walked out the door, I watched their car pull down the long gravel drive and disappear onto the main road. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Chloe found me in the kitchen, nervously, wiping down a clean counter. They're just running errands. Right, she asked, her voice small. Yeah, I said, not looking at her. Just errands. The hours ticked by noon. 305 M. Petnichpe. M. Chloe kept checking her phone, pacing the floor of the cafe. I just sat at the kitchen table working on the farm's real budget. I felt strangely calm. The waiting was the worst part. At 6:30 p.m., just as I was helping Grandma with her dinner, my phone chimed. I looked at the screen. It was the text from my mother. Panama bound. The transfer went through. We're starting our new adventure. We need this. Take care of Eleanor. We'll be in touch. I read it twice. My hands weren't even shaking. I walked over to Chloe, who was just closing the cafe, and handed her the phone without a word. She read it and her face crumpled. It wasn't anger. It was just devastation. She sank onto a stool, her shoulders shaking, and just sobbed. They really did it, she whispered. They just left her. They left us. I wrapped my arms around her. I held her tight as she cried for our parents, for our grandmother, for our broken family. But as I stared out the window into the dark orchard, I felt absolutely nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just a cold, hard resolve. I was ready for this. I let them have their fantasy for exactly 48 hours. I was logging payroll when my phone rang again. An unknown number. Country code Panama. I smiled. Right on time. I let it ring 3 times. Then answered. This is Arya Voss. A professional. Slightly stressed voice came on the line. Miss Arya Voss. This is manager Ricardo, from the Panama Vista Luxury Retirement Community. I'm calling about a Mr. David and Mrs. Susan. They listed you as their financial contact. I'm aware of them, I said, keeping my voice flat. We have a situation. The manager stammered my parents' $50. Null. No. No. Residency deposit had been declined. Through the phone, I heard my furious father, David, screaming that I had stolen their money and left them stranded. I didn't steal anything, Dad, I replied, my voice calm. I protected the trust. I protected Grandma's money. The 50,000 you tried to grab was all that was left. My mother Susan took the phone, hysterical, pleading, fix this. You've ruined our dream. My dream, I shot back, was to keep this farm alive and my grandmother safe. You abandoned your own mother. I gave them a one-time offer. Enough for 2 economy tickets back home. David roared. He would report me for theft and have us thrown off the farm. Go ahead and try, I challenged. When you do, to be ready to explain the fraudulent 000 HELOC loan you took out on this farm using Grandma's forged signature. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The silence on the line was deafening. I hung up. They flew back 3 days later. Defeated my sister, Chloe, or lawyer, Mrs. Davies. And I waited for them at the farm office. I slid 2 folders across the table. Folder 1, I said, is the full accounting. It shows the $200 zero. I legally transferred into a protected account. Folder 2, I continued, is the documentation for your fraudulent loan, and the bank's default notice payment is due in 10 days or they foreclose. My final non-negotiable agreement was simple. Sign over 100% of Applewood orchards to Chloe and me. In exchange, we would use the saved money to pay off their fraudulent loan and save the house. They would be allowed to live in the small guest cottage with supervised visits with Grandma. Option B. Refused to sign. We let the bank foreclose, and Mrs. Davies files criminal charges for elder fraud and a conservatorship suit against them. My father, stripped of all leverage, signed. My mother followed. Oh, shaking. 6 months later, the farm was thriving. Chloe and I, having broken the cycle of toxicity, had rebuilt our family, not on blood, but on trust. I watched my parents' shadows of their former selves quietly trimming hedges, part of their agreement for room and board. Sometimes you have to cut away the toxic parts to save the whole. We let go of the parents we wished we had to become the women we needed to be.